Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Jesse Jackson joining us. Jesse is Head of Consumer and Community Banking and Firmwide Operations New Joiner Experience at JP Chase and is its former Chief Learning Officer. He's a thought leader in the future of work, corporate learning and development, and talent acquisition. As you might expect, we'll be focusing our attention in these areas. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Andy, and truly a privilege to join you today. It's quite riveting that an iconic executive like you, an author of several books, a former CEO, entrepreneur, and now podcaster, plus an active musician, is hosting a podcast called Balancing Act. Truly appropriate and appealing. Also, it's great to reconnect with you, and I hope it's okay to say that I'm a big fan of Kaplan, particularly the work and the focus of that organization under your leadership.
Yeah, no, we, in the spirit of full disclosure, Jesse and I served on Jesse lent his time to the Strategic Advisory Board for Kaplan Professional during my time there, and that's how we met. And Jesse, I too, even though I don't work for Kaplan anymore, I'm a big fan of the work that they do. Before we get started and dive in, we do this with all our guests. Please tell our listeners your story.
My story is a very short one, but it is one that I have consistently referred to as being an accidental executive. More specifically, having served 5 years of active duty within the United States Navy, I was fortunate to be recruited into the then Chase Manhattan Bank Development Program for managers. This career choice provided me with an opportunity to rotate through a number of businesses within a market-leading firm, working through industry consolidation as well as business cycle disruptions. But perhaps most importantly, working with true thought leaders that were mission-driven and committed to attaining truly balanced business and community outcomes and results. These experiences also exposed me to world-class and hyper-intentional training with respect to leadership development, regular talent development, as well as a host of other technical topics. It allowed me to work across lines of businesses and with that work really muscle up in terms of our focus on our customers and how we can deliver transformative value across business cycles, across industry disruption. So again, great to be with you today, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. One event in your life that just put rocket boosters under your career, what would that be?
As you know, it is so difficult to pick sort of just one event, but to be responsive to your question, I'd go back to sort of my formative experiences. And in a real sense, they were made by being part of the United States Navy. It was really there in many ways where I learned through blood, sweat, and tears that there are no shortcuts, that we need to really run marathons. And in some cases and in some seasons, we need to run marathons across a series of sprints. I also was very fortunate that this culture, that was part of the United States Navy of teamwork, hyper communication, collaboration, plus playing the long game, aligned so well with the culture of meritocracy that was fostered at JP Chase. That notion of tenacity, of stamina, this fact that details matter. As Tom Peters famously said, the little things are the big things. In many cases, help to support me as that accelerant as I've navigated now, some 3 decades plus, at JP Chase.
Well, congratulations on such tenure at an organization like J.P. Morgan Chase. That is quite remarkable. I had 22 years at Kaplan, and I think that kind of tenure is quite unique these days. Jesse, you have a broad range of experiences in the field of learning and development, now talent acquisition. How will your experience in learning and development translate into excellence in talent acquisition? What's the relationship between those two disciplines?
Wow. The adjacency between L&D, or learning and development, and talent acquisition is really more of intersectionality. I think all of your podcast viewers are familiar with this notion of war for talent. Well, I can certainly say that war is over and talent has won. Many say that cash is king. I've learned, perhaps the hard way, that really quality is king, especially quality talent. It makes all the difference in any enterprise, commercial or non-for-profit, that the right talent could really be transformative with respect to driving successful outcomes. So being hyper-intentional with respect to talent engagement, being present when making those type of talent selections that are based not just on skills, but are also based on cultural attributes becomes critical. It also means that in this age of acceleration that we're fortunate to live in, that it's not sufficient to just pick the right talent, that talent needs to stay current, to undergo continuous learning and development. So these attributes, of talent acquisition, of talent development, in a meaningful way, deliver an end-to-end experience that, when done well, delivers not just ongoing sustainability, but also greater resiliency for any firm, again, whether that firm be commercial or non-for-profit.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that when the going gets tough for many companies, learning and development actually starts to take a back seat. And I just love your response of, tying talent and learning and development together to send a message to leaders all around the world that your learning objectives, your learning goals, they should be there when times are good, and they should be there when times are not so good, and really double down in those periods when times are toughest. So thank you for that.
I think we've all heard that adage,
go ahead,
Andy, where that story where a CEO is talking to a CFO, and the CEO says, what happens if we train this talent and they leave? And the CFO, says, what happens, if we don't and they stay, right? So to your point, this notion of, investing through the cycles, in the capabilities of the workforce really affords, any enterprise truly a competitive advantage that can, help fast forward, their strategies in how they support, their customers, whether those customers be retail or commercial. So I think you're spot on, Andy.
Yeah. So let's focus on the world of talent acquisition. The show is called Balancing Act. So if you had to choose the most important balancing act that the leader of the talent acquisition function has to play, kind of irrespective of industry segment, what would that balancing act be?
Wow, that's a great question. And, in many respects, it's perhaps an easy one to answer. As I think about the most important decision, the most important work of any leader, within talent acquisition, irrespective of industry, irrespective of function, is really hiring the best people in the world. And that's much easier said than done. But why this balancing act is so challenging is because the difference between the first place and second place candidate can often be measured in microns, in as much as there is, that little distance between the two. I think it was Steve Jobs, the former chairman, CEO, co-founder of Apple, that said, the secret of his success is that he had gone through great lengths in order to hire the best people in the world. And the results, certainly in his case, were transformative, as he has sort of changed the world as a result of, our digitalization and, these smartphones that, we carry around with us. I think he was right. And I think we could all learn something from that. Going back to this adage of, this age of acceleration and technological change, it really becomes important, to ensure that, as we are, selecting talent, we're doing so in a way that really is driven by quality and affording us an ability to leverage that quality, to further accelerate, how any firm, public or private, moves forward.
Yeah. So, Jesse, before we go to a quick commercial break, let's narrow the scope of that previous question to your career arc. What's the most important balancing act that you've played that's contributed to your career success?
Wow. Now, that's a tough question to answer, Andy. But as I reflect on that question, it really is this notion of being able to unlearn as rapidly, as quickly as we do learn. And what I mean more specifically by that is this notion of really bringing a growth mindset that is really not anchored and weighed down by something that I think we've all heard. And, we do it that way because that's the way we've always done it, right? We need to ensure that this notion of flexibility, or what some may call adaptability, is something that helps future-proof our careers. And that requires us to really change perspectives and change and shift paradigms from time to time. In many respects, it really proves that Darwin was right. That the race doesn't always go to the fastest or goes to the strongest, but really goes to those individuals that are able to be more adaptable in terms of understanding the changing ecosystems in which they operate in, whether that's legislative, whether that's technology, whether that's just shifts in patterns of change from commercial or consumer customers, but really ensuring that we are bringing that level of flexibility and growth mindset to how we are processing those inputs that we all get so much. And that we are leveraging them, to not be anchored on what we did yesterday, but really ensuring that, we're bringing fresh thinking, to how we are attempting to solution, those challenges that we encounter today and tomorrow.
So thank you for shining a bright light on the skill of adaptability, which is really something that gets nurtured and grows throughout our life. And as we age, I've found that we have to work even harder at being adaptable, because it's really easy to slip into a fixed mindset. And thank you for maybe the unintended puns. You said anchored a couple of times in that, and that Navy background was just coming right out. So thanks for that, Jesse. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. I'm Andy Temte. My new book, The Balanced Business, is scheduled for release on October 3rd. This book blends everything I've learned over the last 35 years and details the management operating system I would deploy if I could go back and do it all over again. The Balanced Business is a practical, real-world guide to help businesses achieve long-term success that's built on a culture of trust balanced with accountability. The Balanced Business is available for pre-order on Amazon.com today. And we're back with Jesse Jackson talking about the mission-critical roles of learning and development and talent acquisition. Jesse, on this show, we talk a lot about work readiness. As we put the COVID-19 pandemic in the rearview mirror, what trends are you seeing in the work readiness of applications for entry-level jobs? What are today's primary challenges and opportunities?
Wow. As we think about coming out of the pandemic, the fact is so much has changed, right? And some of that change is, very prominently evidenced by, how we have worked, to truly digitalize, so much of what we do. And in digitalizing so much of what we've done is really trying to take the friction out of the processes, trying to accelerate those processes as well. So as I think about, certainly, what has changed in the context of how we are, actually both acquiring and developing talent, it really is, being intentional with respect to meeting our candidates where they are, irrespective of where that may be physically. And what we're seeing is, what I have often referred to as a 3D economy, one that is significantly more digital, significantly more diverse, significantly more distributed, and our ability to really, lean into, those capabilities and optimize them in a way that allows, our candidates to interface with us, via mobile devices, via their PCs, being able to, leave their TikTok interview, appeal, with us really allows us to expand the talent that we can touch, the talent that can touch us and inform us of the skills and attributes and cultural elements that they can help enrich us with. So this notion of again, really putting, our candidates, putting our employees at the center of how we think about, delivering value, really becomes critical. And in many respects, that's the same thing that any excellent enterprise is doing with their customers, right? Is really ensuring that we're taking the friction out of the processes, that we're making it more intuitive, more user-friendly for individuals to find us, to navigate to, that job posting that they may be interested in, to apply for that, and then, us being as responsive in terms of, getting back to them and informing them of outcomes. So it really is, those processes in this 3D world, that has really allowed us to, continue to move fast forward, with respect to, delivering value, to our customers and to our employees alike.
Yeah, thank you for that 3D phrase. If I get it right, it's digital, diverse, distributed.
That's right.
That's a really great framework for folks to think about. You hear articles in the Wall Street Journal about how frustrated some leaders are. I would call them managers. I wouldn't bestow the leadership title on them necessarily, but they're frustrated that things aren't going back to the way that they were. And I think that 3D model is something that folks should really think about. The sheer amount of change that happened over the pandemic is quite astounding. A lot of people think that we were just at home, not doing anything, just kind of hanging around waiting for it to be over. And nothing could be further from the truth. As you mentioned, business process changed, outlooks changed, attitudes changed. And boy, if you have a fixed mindset that wants to go back to the way it was back in 2018, that's a tough row to hoe.
Agreed. And in many respects, these elements, that, would have taken, 5 or, 10 years, occurred in 2. And it is a testament to how resilient, enterprises, how resilient people, employees, candidates can be in the face of change. And in many respects, it has taught us, some very sound lessons in terms of speed, in terms of, this notion of, how do we, as we think about, putting our customers, putting our employees first, also do that in a way that is keeping them out of harm's way as well, in terms of their safety, whether for a pandemic, whether it's medical, or other considerations that we are responsible as leaders to really be caring for and thinking about.
Yeah. So Jesse, we frequently discuss the balancing act that we have to play between the application of technical skill and human skill in the modern world of work. If you had a new entrant into the workforce sitting right in front of you right now, what advice do you give to them to balance human and technical skill as they begin to navigate their career?
Yeah. And this is something, that certainly has been, I think, a key focus, of not just your podcast, Andy, but also a theme in your 2 books, right? And as I think about, the balancing act, as I think about, counsel that I would offer, it's this notion that, relationships, are like rocket ships, and our ability to really get beyond the transactional and, try to understand, folks, try to, really be intentional, with respect to listening, and helping folks bring their unique perspectives, their unique views into how we need to solve and solution, the issues that we encounter. So it really will be one to say, this notion of teamwork, of collaboration, it's real, but it starts by understanding, and that understanding, it really starts by this notion of deepening relationships with those individuals that you work with in an effort to build trust. And as you're able to build trust, you're reducing barriers, and that allows one to work more effectively, more faster, more thoughtfully, towards common purpose. So it really is that human quality of building relationships with those individuals that you're interfacing with, whether they be peers, whether they be other leaders within the organizations, whether they be customers, right? And try to really get past that transactional view, so you truly understand what their motivations are, what their interests are, and with that understanding, can be more effective in terms of helping them obtain some of those objectives.
Yeah, I love the phrase relationships are like rocket ships. I 100% agree. When I ask the rocket booster question of my guests, your rocket booster experience was being part of the Navy. I'm sure that helped a great deal from a relationship perspective. Many of my guests come back to some relationship that they nurtured earlier in their career, and it was a relationship that really accelerated them forward. Now, Jesse, as we start to close out the show, let's do another thought experiment. I'll put you in a time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of yourself. What would that message be, and what previous version of yourself do you choose to send it to?
I think I would go back, certainly to, my time in management development program, here at JP Morgan Chase. And as I think about sort of, getting guidance, it's often valuable when one is at inflection points within their career where they're at sort of some fork in the road. And what I would likely tell myself at that point in time, is really being the importance of being more present, with respect to, what it is I was doing, who it is I was doing with, because while I had formed many lifelong relationships, I have also had an opportunity where I have multitasked, too much, through processes that, had I brought a more intentional focus, would have allowed me to really, be more informed, more enriched, with respect to those individuals that I've worked with, those processes that I've navigated through. And as I've gotten away from them, I reflect back on them, as being, so critically important, to helping inform, decisions that I've made, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years hence. So this notion of really being, present, in the moment, becomes so critical. And I think often as young adults, we want to zoom past things that may not be sort of critical to what we think is important. But as we reflect back on them, the criticality, the impactfulness of having really, been more mentally engaged in those processes would have been invaluable. So I think it really would be that guidance of, being present, and really, going deep, within those processes, even if I didn't get their importance at that time. It really is a practice that I try to, truly exhibit now in terms of doing sit-withs with individuals to understand processes that some may believe are pedestrian, but are so critical to really understanding, what the front line is doing, and more importantly, how as a leader we can drive greater value and impact to those frontline employees that come in every day and labor so hard in order to, deliver value, to our candidates and to our customers.
Well, you and I are kindred spirits here as it relates to the presence message to our earlier selves. I, too, lament at the amount of quote unquote presence that I gave to certain things, family being one of them. But you're right. Things that we wanted to zoom past. I probably should have dwelled a little bit, and that's really the function of a mentor and a coach, and opening our ears to those mentors in our lives that can help us appreciate the criticality, the importance of the things that we're trying to zoom past early in our careers. Jesse, final question. You're on the board of the Education Trust. Can you tell us more about the Education Trust's purpose and what you're excited about for their future?
And thank you very much for that question, Andy. Truly is, a labor of love for me as I think about the work that I do as a board member of the Education Trust. And the Education Trust, is a not-for-profit enterprise that is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and is myopically focused on educational equity. As we think about, the educational scarring that has occurred as a result of the pandemic, the work that that organization is doing, in my view, is really intensified. I think it was the economist, Thomas Piketty's book that was called, I think, Capital in the 21st Century, that referenced that, over 300 years of economic history, the principal and most enduring mechanism for the distribution of wealth, as well as the reduction in inequality, is the diffusion of skills and knowledge. I think that saying takes on so much more importance, in this age that we're living in, with AI, robotic process automation, and machine learning and other capabilities. And in order to really empower our workforce and ensure that we truly are going to remain sort of the number one economy in the world, this notion of really focusing on educational development and doing that irrespective of zip code is critical. And really, that is the work of the Educational Trust, to really ensure that we are focused across all areas on educational equity, and are providing those training and skills that are going to give us the workforce for the 21st and 22nd century that will continue to allow America to lead.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, we're at the end of our time. I am deeply proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud of the work that you're doing at J.P. Morgan Chase, the Education Trust. Everybody should know who Jesse Jackson is, because you are one of the individuals who's really making a difference in this world. So thank you. Thank you for being on today's show.
Again, Andy, thank you. I really appreciate and am privileged by the opportunity to reconnect with you today and be part of your podcast.
Awesome. Well, my name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. We're on all the major podcast streaming services. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your colleagues, with your friends. Thank you very much for listening.